It's the Boomer Music Experience, and today Randy Halmo and I are going to talk about the life and times of one Brian Wilson, late of the Beach Boys. And boy, it was a tremendous loss for everyone when we lose somebody that was such an icon in the music industry. He just stood out. You and I off air were just talking about all the different things, and we're going to get to them on the show for sure. But I mean, I want to start today's show, Randy, with a question to you specifically about the Beach Boys. And I just, give me your thoughts, because 1962 they hit. You're a 14-year-old young man. What was that? Tell me about that moment when you're like the first time you hear these harmonies and the Beach Boys. What was it like for you?
Um, Good point, Dave. It was a totally different sound in the pop culture. The California sound, the surfing sound, it was kind of conglomeration, but the voices, the harmony, the production. Brian Wilson, he was a master at this, and of course, vocalist too, and bassist. But uh, Brian Wilson is in a whole different class by himself during his musical career. There's no one who could touch him, and I'm going to expand a bit on that into the program. Uh, the closest person that we would have that would be close to his attributes in music would be David Foster, Canadian David
Yeah,
Foster.
it's a good. Yeah, that's good. And I think his composing, like what he was able to put together for the Beach Boys, was just the tip of the iceberg when we get into this show, because just phenomenal the work he could do. And we were talking off air, just talking about that was his whole life, was music. Like that seemed to
Exactly.
be what drove him, and what he just, that was all his thoughts were. And I
Mm-hmm.
think we'll get into that, because that's just another level of you know another
So,
level of
so
music
true.
that we very few get to. So let's get into it. Let's start with the Brian Wilson story. Here we go with Randy Helmo from
Okay,
Classy FM.
Dave. First of all, I'd like to do a info on Brian Wilson, and then plus musical influences to get us started. Brian Wilson, born on June 20th, 1942. He was an American musician, songwriter, singer, and record producer who co-founded the Beach Boys. Now, often called a genius, well, he definitely was a genius in the musical world, for his novel approaches to pop composition and mastery of recording techniques. He is widely acknowledged as one of the most innovative and significant songwriters of the 20th century. So true. His best known work is distinguished for its high production values, complex harmonies, and orchestrations. Wow. Also, in addition to that, he did vocal layering and also falsetto. And falsetto, as we both know, Dave, during the disco years, the Bee Gees, like this is a lot of falsetto coming in there with the disco era too. So I'd like to, first of all, uh, draw upon Brian Wilson's formative influences, which included George Gershwin,
Yeah.
the Four Freshmen, Phil Spector, who was a good writer too. A lot of the 45s, I see Phil Spector, and of course we can't miss out on Burt Bacharach. Uh,
Yes.
Bacharach and David. Those were two writers. You see still see the 45 spinning in my head, Bacharach and David, and they songwriters of a lot of great groups. Just off the top of my head, the Carpenters for sure. Anyway, in 1961, Brian began his professional career as a member of the Beach Boys, serving as the band's songwriter, producer, co-lead vocalist, bassist, and keyboardist. Like, holy moly. And a true genius. And
Yeah.
he was the best of his class in each of those specific departments of music, second to none, even to this day. Just unbelievable. Now, after signing with Capitol Records in 1962, of course, Capitol Records were huge in the decade of the 60s. And now with vinyl coming back, Capitol Records are right back at it in the scene, and they're doing very well. So after Brian signed with Capitol Records in 1962, he became the first pop musician credited for writing, arranging, producing, and performing his own material.
Just
Like,
yeah.
holy moly. He also produced acts such as the Honeys and American Spring. By the mid 1960s, he had written or co written more than 24 U.S. top 40 hits for the Beach Boys, but also Surf City, Jan and Dean. That was a quadruple platinum hit for them. He wrote the words, the lyrics to that, made the music to it, and Jan and Dean, they were the singers on that one. And I'll tell you, July of 1963, that was at the top of the Billboard charts, Surf City, for 10 weeks, the entire summer of 1963. May of 1964, the Beach Boys, How I Get Around. Oh, good song. Help Me Rhonda, 1965, another big hit for them. That was in July of 1965. Excuse me.
It just it shows too how their first two hits just explode. Like they're a phenomenon within themselves once their music does come out, right? Because it's that whole style, it's that whole feel. Like I Get Around and Help Me Rhonda, like
Excuse me.
everybody. I mean, my parents had those albums. You know what I mean? I remember listening to that. That's for
Yep.
sure. Those were, and they were so much fun. It was really fun music.
Yeah, Dan, definitely a California sound.
Yep.
He's also considered, Brian, he's among the first music producers and the first rock producers to apply the studio that he was recording as an instrument.
Yes.
Wow. Like, wow. In the late 1964, he had a few struggles with mental illness, but he overcame those and he got back on track the late 60s. And his first professional comeback, it was a great effort. The Beach Boys, Love You, 1977. So we're looking at genres here for our audience, David. He was a musician, okay.
Yeah.
He was a singer, as we know. He was a songwriter. He wrote a lot of songs, not only for the Beach Boys, but other artists too, as we had earlier alluded to, Jan and Dean. And he was a record producer. Wow. His active years, 1961 to last year, 2024. Man, that's very good. His father, Murray Wilson, really guided him into the music world. And he was a pillar of strength for Brian to accentuate and to explore all these musical departments that no one else had even ventured into. Like, how good is that? But good for his father to propel him that way, because obviously he could see in Brian the musical abilities above and beyond most of the songwriters, vocalists of that time frame.
Just the whole family, right? His two brothers as well, right? They're so musically inclined. It's incredible.
Yeah, Dennis and Carl Wilson.
Yeah.
And of course, cousin Mike Love, like,
yeah.
and cousin Stan Love, like Hulk, and later on down the line, Al Jardine. But here it's kind of all in the family. Like, how good is that? Now, I just want to expand a little bit on early influences for Brian Wilson. He also derived primarily from rock and roll, doo-wop, and vocal jazz. But at the age of 2 years young, he heard Glenn Miller's 1943 rendition of Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue. an experience that it really left a lasting impression and impact on Brian Wilson.
That's amazing.
1943, Glenn
Yeah.
Miller song. Like, wow. And later he was saying it sort of became a general life theme. Well, it certainly did. It propelled him right from the get-go. Glenn Miller.
It's amazing. Like when we look at that perspective, and now you think you and I should talk about that one show. We'll do this about
Mhm.
the early influences that I mean, neither one of I can't play any instrument, but the early influences in music had in my life probably the
Mhm.
bearing, right? Just what
Yeah.
Mr. Wilson was talking about. I mean, there's so much of it that when you look back, when you said that, I started to sort of go, okay, what was the first song I remember rock and roll? Like you just it hits you right in that
Yeah.
way.
Right on.
Incredible that at 2 years old he knew that. Like he
Oh,
felt that music that early.
absolutely. Some of his other favorite artists, Roy Rogers, King of the Cowboys, Roy Rogers, Carl Perkins, Blue Suede Shoes.
Yep.
Well, I've got one up on Carl Perkins. When I go to the September 9th fashion show for Run for the Cure at the Delhi German home, Gail Catherwood, MC
Yep.
extraordinaire, I'll be wearing not blue suede shoes, I'll be wearing pink suede shoes. And wow, I stole a page from Carl Perkins on that. But other favorites of Brian Wilson, Bill Haley, Rock Around the Clock, and of course Elvis Presley,
Of course.
and Henry Mancini,
Yep.
okay, Moon River, and Rosemary Clooney, okay, Sarah Sarah. So here these people in the 50s who were excelling were a major part of Brian Wilson's influences in that music direction. Wow, that's incredible.
All those folks affected Brian Wilson's music DNA. You know what I
Oh,
mean? Like
absolutely.
what a combination to throw together and to have that mind compose what he composed out of it. It's crazy.
Absolutely. Yeah. Brian's accomplishments as a producer helped initiate an era of unprecedented creative harmony. For example, it is regarded as the most important figure to many music genres and movements, including, as I mentioned earlier, the California sound,
Yep.
art pop, psychedelia, chamber pop, progressive music, punk, sunshine pop, and since the 1980s, his influence has extended to styles such as indie rock, dream pop, hip hop, and vapor wave. I've never heard of that one. That's a
I've
new.
never heard of that one either, but we'll have to look into that. That's our job on this show.
Yeah. And of course, he received numerous industry awards. We'll get into those later on in the program. Right now, let's take a look at the background and musical training of Brian Wilson. The years 1942 to 1961. Brian Wilson was born, as I mentioned earlier, June 20th, 1942. That was at the Sentinel Hospital Medical Center in Englewood, California. He was the first child of Audrey Neva and Murray Wilson. And now Wilson, his father was a machinist who later pursued songwriting part-time. Okay, so there's the musical key. There's the link there with his father. And Wilson's two younger brothers, Dennis and Carl Wilson, they were born respectively in 1944 and 1946. Now, shortly after Dennis's birth, the family moved from Englewood, California, to nearby Hawthorne, California, about a 45-minute drive from Englewood. From an early age, Wilson exhibited an aptitude for learning by ear. And boy, did he ever pursue this aptitude, learning by ear. Wow, unbelievable. His father was a driving force in cultivating his children's musical talents. Wilson undertook 6 weeks of accordion lessons. I spent 5 years taking accordion.
Oh,
George Romanek from Waterford, Ontario, was our teacher. And I'm talking now, I'm going back the year 1964, 65. Boy, is it that long ago? Yeah, I guess it
break
was.
out that accordion. Here we go. Randy Halmo's going
Yeah.
to do a live show one of these days.
There we go. E-I-E-I-E-I-O.
A tribute
Where's
to Walter
Walter
Ostanek.
Ostanek? That's
Both
another
of us said that
program
at the same time. That was kind of funny.
for another show.
Walter Ostanek. Yeah, we could do a show on him too.
Brian Wilson owned an educational record titled The Instruments of the Orchestra. And it was a regular listener. He was a regular listener on KFWB, which was his favorite radio station at the time. Carl introduced him to R&B, and their uncle Charlie taught him boogie woogie piano. So, like, even the cousins and uncles also musically inclined. So this was just a step in the right direction. And Brian Wilson pursued it like no other musician in the history of music. One of Wilson's first forays into songwriting, penned when he was only 9 years old, okay, was the lyrics to Stephen Foster's Oh, Susanna.
Oh.
Wow. When he was 12, his family acquired an upright piano, and he began teaching himself to play the piano, and by spending hours mastering his favorite songs. What good is that? He learned how to write manuscript music through a friend of his father. Wilson sang with peers at school functions as well as with family and friends at home, and guided his two brothers in learning harmony parts, which they would rehearse together. How good is that, Carl and Dennis?
Yeah.
He also played piano obsessively after school, demonstrating and constructing harmonies of the four freshmen by listening to short segments of their songs on a phonograph machine. Well, now it's a record player back then, but record players are coming back in now that vinyl is coming back. And then, of course, he was working to recreate and blend different sounds note by note on the keyboard. In high school, Brian Wilson played quarterback for the Hawthorne High School football team. He also played for the American Legion baseball team. And he also ran cross country in his senior year. So not only was he a great musician, he was very athletic too. At 15, here's one I love. At 15, he briefly worked part-time sweeping floors at a jewelry store. Hey, yeah, it's all part of
Something
it.
you can relate to, eh, Randy?
It's all part of it. Yes,
all
and
the families.
I
Yeah.
can certainly attest to that. Yeah, and that was his only paid employment before his success in music. So from jewelry store to music. Wow.
Where have I heard this story before?
Interesting. Yeah. He also cleaned for his father's machine company, Able, on weekends. Now, on his 16th birthday, he received a portable 2-track tape recorder, allowing him to experiment with recording songs, group vocals, and other production techniques. Yeah, these tape recorders. I still have my original tape recorder, and it's the wheel to wheel round tape. I got the bigger one, then I've got a smaller model too. But
now would there be some lost Randy Halmo accordion music on one of those tapes? Should this be dug out of the archives?
I actually did. I'll have to go back and find it. And what did I play? What was the song I played? I'll have to think of that, Dave. But I did play that at the music festival in Hamilton that year, and I was pretty nervous playing it in front of family and everyone else, but I did quite well with it. I think it was
music just oozes from you, doesn't it, Randy?
Yeah,
It's just you.
I just have a bit of a mental block there, but I'll
Well,
think of it later on in the
we're
program.
going back. We're going back a few years
A
too.
few
Don't
years, yeah,
yeah.
that's true. Yeah, this is true. Oh, you got to have heart. You got to
Oh,
have heart.
miles of heart. Oh, okay.
Yeah, and yeah, I practiced that and practiced that. Royal Connaught Hotel, and
Ooh, nice.
I did pretty good. Yeah, you got to have heart. Good stuff. Yeah, I'll stick to my day job. Okay. In October of 1959, Wilson submitted an essay, My Philosophy. He stated that his ambitions were to make a name for himself in music. And boy, did he ever. He went over the top and then some. One of Brian Wilson's earliest public performances was at a fall arts program at high school. He enlisted his cousin and frequent singing partner Mike Love to entice Carl into the group, named the newly formed membership Carl and the Passions.
Carl and the
God,
Passions.
that
Doesn't cut it. It's
doesn't
just not
really
Beach Boys yet.
sound.
It's getting there.
No, they perform songs by Dion and the Belmonts, the Four Freshmen, impressing classmate and musician Al Jardine. Okay. And Fred Morgan, Wilson's high school music teacher, recalled his aptitude for learning Bach and Beethoven at the ripe age of only 17 years young.
Isn't that crazy? Oh, boy.
Unbelievable. In September of 1960, he crafted his first entirely original medley, Surfer Girl, 1961, and that was inspired by a Dion and the Belmonts song called When You Wish Upon a Star.
Oh,
Well,
wow.
that was a Walt Disney song that Perry Como incorporated, and he had the original version. But how good is that? Like, hokey
Interesting
dino.
stuff.
We now take a look at the formation of the Beach Boys. Three Wilson brothers, Love and Jardine, debuted their first music group together called the Penaltones. Penaltones. And that was the autumn of 1961. At Dennis's suggestion, Brian and Love co-wrote the group's first song, Surfin'. And there's where we get the surfing sound along with the California song. It was kind of a intermixed. And of course, Murray, his father, became their manager. Well, why not? That was natural.
It's all there.
So Surfin' became a hit in Los Angeles and reached 75 on the national Billboard sales charts. The group's name was changed by Canex Records to the Beach Boys. Now, Canex Records, not as popular as Capitol, not as popular as Epic Records at that time frame in music. Their major live debut was at the Ritchie Valens Memorial Dance on New Year's Eve, 1961. Just days earlier, Wilson had received an electric bass from his father and quickly learned to play, prompting Al Jardine to switch to rhythm guitar. So here we have Al Jardine on rhythm guitar and Wilson on electric bass guitar. Wow. Wilson collaborated with local musicians Gary Usher to produce demo recordings for new tracks, including 409, 409, Right On, and Surfin' Safari, another huge hit for the Beach Boys. In Capitol Records, they persuaded to release the demos as a single, achieving a double-sided national hit. And on these 45s, as you can see, the 45 here, we've got the Beach Boys, side A, side B. Well, of course, most of these side A, side Bs became major hits for the Beach Boys. Like that, and that's to do that on a 45 back in those days. That was something really, really special and very unique too. Usually, you got either the A side or the B side went to the top 10 of the national Billboard hit, but not both. However, the Beach Boys did it and did it very, very well. We'll now take a look, Dave, at the peak years, 1962 to 1966. In 1962, Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys signed a 7-year contract with Capitol Records, and that was under producer Nick Vanette. And he knew a good thing when he saw them. During sessions for their debut album, Surfin' Safari, and how aptly named, Brian Wilson negotiated with Capitol to record the band outside of the label's basement studios, which he deemed ill-suited for his group. Wow, okay. Capitol Records permitted the Beach Boys to fund their own external sessions while retaining all rights to the recordings. And that is very important.
That's critical.
Just this year in February, Taylor Swift bought back all of her rights to all of her music. Smart move. Taylor Swift, she's financially, she's a good singer, she's a good pop star, but she's got financial smarts. And so she did the same thing the Beach Boys did. And fantastic. Inspired by producer Phil Spector, whose work with the Teddy Bears he admired, Brian Wilson sought to emulate Phil Spector's career path. Wilson reflected, "I've always felt I had a behind-the-scenes man. I'm kind of more of a behind-the-scenes man rather than an entertainer." Well, I kind of disagree with that. I think he exceeded well in both. Don't you, Dave?
I do. I think he was maybe a little more shy about being out front. I think he loved that intimate part of him and the music when he was creating it, for sure.
Yep, absolutely. And collaborating with songwriter Gary Usher, he composed numerous songs patterned after the Teddy Bears style and produced records for local talent. His first uncredited production outside the Beach Boys was Rachel and the Revolvers, and their song was Revolution.
Wow.
Not spelled the same as the Beatles' Revolution, but really, really good. And that was released on, here again, another huge record company at that time, Dot Records. So, yeah, it's quite the move by Brian Wilson. He was definitely the spearhead, the brains, the driving force behind the Beach Boys. And it's a total family affair with cousins and nephews and of course, with his father being part-time songwriter. Hey, throw that in. That's icing on the cake.
At this point in his career, too, he almost seems obsessed with music, doesn't he? Like,
absolutely, Dave. Absolutely.
Everything, learning bass like that quick, playing the piano, like just composing for other people, rating others, just doing it all.
Oh,
and you're
absolutely.
Like, wow. And what is he? How old is he here? Like 20, what, 21, 22? Like,
He's
not that old.
Yeah, 21. Yep, you're right. Yep, 21. Yep. In October of 1962, Safari Records, which was a short-lived label, founded by his father Murray, they released the single Surfer Moon. And it didn't really do too well. From January to March of 1963, Wilson produced the Beach Boys' second album, Surfin' USA. Yes, now we're into it.
Yeah.
But he limited his public appearances with the group to do television gigs and local shows to prioritize studio work. Okay, so now he's...
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
But in March of 1963, Capitol released Surfin' USA, the Beach Boys' first top 10 single on the Billboard Top 100. Good for them. And this was only the beginning. The accompanying album peaked at number 2 on the Billboard charts in July, cementing the Beach Boys as a major commercial act.
Yep.
And Billboard, they knew right away this was a band that the Beach Boys, they're going far. This is a superior band. Look out. Wilson co-wrote Surf City. Okay, Jan and Dean. Jan and Dean put that to the top of the charts in July of 1963. Wow. Here it is, July 2025. This is July 1963 we're talking about. And it was his first composition to do so. And Jan and Dean, of course, their voices with Surf City, made
Yep.
to order. Just, it was definitely, again, the
Perfect fit.
California surfing sound, made to order. Brian Wilson was officially credited as the Beach Boys' producer on their album Surfer Girl, which was recorded in June and July of 1963, and they released it in September of 1963. By the year end, Wilson had written, arranged, or produced 42 songs for other acts. Wow. That's a lot of songs.
That's
A
a lot
lot
of
of
music
songs.
created. Yes.
That is huge. Very, very huge. In February of 1964, Beatlemania swept the U.S. And of course, February 9th, 1964, The Ed Sullivan Show.
Yeah.
And now, here are the Beatles. Beatlemania, a development that deeply concerned Brian Wilson, who felt the Beach Boys' supremacy had been threatened by the British invasion. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. The Beatles' invasion, he writes, shook me up a lot.
Wow.
So we stepped on the gas a little bit, and in May of 1964, released I Get Around. Their first U.S. #1 hit is identified by scholar James Perrone as representing both a successful response to the British invasion and the beginning of an unofficial rivalry between Brian Wilson and the Beatles, principally Paul McCartney. Well, now Sir Paul McCartney.
Sir
God,
Paul.
I never knew that. Okay. The B-side, here again, the B-side, Don't Worry Baby, was cited by Wilson in a 1970 interview as probably the best record we've ever done. Well, all due respect, Brian, no, I Get Around. Like, Don't Worry Baby, that was a great song, but I
like
Get
the lyrics
Around
on
tops that. Sorry, Brian. During the group's first major European tour, a reporter asked how he felt about originating the surfing sound, to which he responded by saying he aimed to produce a sound that was teens dig and that can be applied to any theme. And he was absolutely correct on that. Absolutely correct. Like, hokey Dinah. Throughout 1965, Brian Wilson's musical ambitions progressed significantly with the albums The Beach Boys Today, March of 1965, and Summer Days and Summer Nights. Wow, sounds a bit like Grease Lightning.
I was just going to say that.
Brian Wilson composed portions of the Beach Boys single California Girls. There's another great song.
Oh.
He later described the session for the song's backing track held on April 6th as his favorite, and the opening orchestral section as the greatest piece of music that I've ever written. And
wow.
Yeah, if you listen to that song half a dozen times over and over, yeah, I definitely agree with them 1000% on that one. Absolutely. In December of 1965, Wilson enlisted jingle writer Tony Asher as his lyricist for the Beach Boys' next album, and it was a big one, the best they've ever done, Pet Sounds.
Yes.
And Pet Sounds came out May of 1966, the best album they've ever done. Wouldn't you agree, Dave?
I think for the band for sure, and I think it was that was an album the Beatles were afraid of. It kind of swung because they were hearing about Pet Sounds coming out, and they were concerned, and I think that rivalry probably, I don't even want to call it a rivalry. I mean, just the quality of music that came out of those two groups alone, they were just trying to I don't want to say outdo each other. They were building off each other. You know what I mean? For their album.
Definitely. Absolutely.
And when they did that, we were the ones that benefited the most. I mean, we got this unbelievable era of music that just, I don't know if it's ever been matched, to be honest with you. But Pet Sounds, and that inspired the Beatles. I mean,
it sure did.
There you go, Brian Wilson inspiring the Beatles. John Lennon and Paul McCartney. Who would have thought George Harrison?
Absolutely.
I mean, it's crazy when you think about it. It really is what an era of music.
It certainly is. And that concludes part one
It's
there of
it,
the
it's
Brian
yeah.
Wilson and Beach Boys formation, early life. Just now in part two next month, we're going to hit the Pet Sounds and Smile, um, which is well documented. We also hit a bit of a decline for the Beach Boys, but continued touring. We'll certainly delve into that fully from the years 2011 to 2025. And of course, the accolades and the awards for the Beach Boys.
I'm excited about Pet Sounds and Smile because Smile was like 35 years in the making. Like it's
That's
just one
right.
of those pieces of music that just took forever, but he got to it, which was absolutely wonderful. Yeah, this concludes part one. Folks, next month, part two, Randy, Boomer Music Experience. We continue the show on Brian Wilson. Thanks for doing this today, Randy Halmo.
Glad to work out with you there, Dave. And it's there's so much about the Beach Boys, and part two coming your way next month. Have a good one, Dave.
You too.